What are your daily rituals? Why do you do them? What happens if you don't? Are there any rituals you want to add to your routine? Hi, this is Sara. I'm a relationship coach, dancer, and Taoist. In every episode, I'll be exploring psychedelics, well-being, or the human experience, and this one is on how ritual affects the brain. So why do we have ritual? Ritual is a way of looking back. It's a way of connecting with our lineage, our history, our ancestors. It's one of the ways that we create meaning and tap into something larger than ourselves. It connects us to culture. It connects us to a future self based on all of the dreams of those that came before us. It helps us create a big picture vision for ourselves. It helps us look forward. It helps us prepare. It helps us practice a belief or behavior. It helps us focus, set intention, and focus attention. It helps us pick something that matters to us and practice prioritizing it so we can become the future selves that we dream of. It's also a way to be present. Repetition is incredibly soothing. It's predictable. It's familiar. It creates a sense of order that's really comforting, especially in the face of so much unknown in the world and so much that's out of our control. Ritual also has a clear beginning, middle, and end, and our bodies like that. It creates a lot of knowns. When something starts, where something's going, and knowing when it's complete. That's tidy in our bodies. We experience a sense of soothing when that happens. My morning ritual is really set at this point, and this is a practice that I learned from Rick Hansen. I was studying with him at Esalen. I was blessed to be there on a gorgeous sunny day out on a grassy field. You could see the raw ocean. There were literally whales spouting, dolphins jumping, hummingbirds playing, butterflies floating by. In other words, it was a really easy place to learn a new ritual. But he talked about it in really pragmatic terms, and he talked about feeling a sense of safety, feeling a sense of satisfaction, and feeling a sense of connection. And he does that strategically because each of those different concepts lights up in a different part of the brain. So if we start with a sense of safety, he's talking about the reptilian part of that part of the brain that's something like 14 million years old. It's the part of the brain that evolved first. It's the old, ancient wiring that has to do with a lot of our automatic impulses, our automatic responses. And Rick suggests that we pet the lizard. We do something soothing for the lizard. So for instance, I was gardening the other day and I was moving some rocks around and this big lizard ran out. And as soon as it saw me, it froze. Completely still. And I was like, buddy, if I was a predator, you wouldn't be very safe right now. And yet it's still this very impulsive instinct to just completely freeze, right? And so we want to do something to soothe the lizard brain. And Rick suggests we think of something that makes us feel safe. And it's hard to feel safe, right? There's the pandemic that's been going on. There's all of the world crises that are going on. There's the particular harm or fear or anxiety or worry that we experience in our daily lives. And so we're not bypassing that because that's real, but it's easy to feel that. That's always readily at hand. And so there's something about being able to also shift the focus when there's a moment when we actually are safe. And I would only want you to do this practice in an environment where you actually feel safe. And he suggests something as simple as thinking the four walls of this house are still standing or this room are still standing. I also like to think about the fact that I have enough food in my fridge, that I'm not going to go hungry, or the fact that I get to wake up in a warm bed. Those are all things that give my body a sense of safety. Then moving along, you can think of something that makes you feel satisfied. And I already mentioned the food in the fridge. I don't think it's going to be a surprise that I'm super food motivated. So things that make me feel satisfying are, for instance, my morning pancakes. And I eat a tremendous amount of pancakes. For real, y'all, it's almost every day. They are deeply satisfying to me. Also, getting your bare feet on the earth or standing in sunlight. These aren't things you actually have to do. These are things you just need to recall in your mind that give you a sense of satisfaction, something that gives you that sense of contentedness. And this is dealing with the mammalian part of your brain. And Rick refers to this as feeding the mouse. Again, food motivated. So you're doing something that provides that little mammalian part of your brain something pleasing. Then after that, we're thinking of something that makes us feel connected. And I'm going to hodgepodge this a little bit because while I was at Esalen, there was also another guide there named Fred Luskin. And he actually had us do a practice where in order to feel connected, we pictured somebody that we did not have a contentious relationship with. So this might not be your lover or your mother. This might be somebody else in your life, maybe a best friend. For me, it's my brother, where it's really easy for me to call up a picture of Connor in my mind and think about all of the whiskey tastings that we like to do, whatever anime show we're going to check out. Him and I can just really get into lots of smooth transactions, rip rolling along. We have a very similar, dry, kind of dark sense of humor. And it just feels really good to be with somebody who can laugh with you in a way that like just feels really synergistic with your internal landscape. And so my brother definitely is that for me. So I'll think of all of those things that make me feel super connected to him. You could also think of your connection to nature or source energy or a goal that you have for yourself, like a bigger vision or value that you have in your life, anything that makes you feel connected to people, purpose, passion, meaning. And that's dealing with the neomammalian part of your brain. So now we're more in the prefrontal cortex. And this is where we get to hug the monkey. So it's this more primate part of our brain. We're social creatures. We're geared for connection. And so you get to decide for yourself what connection looks like for you. Like, again, not connection that stresses you out, but connection that genuinely is soothing. And that's the practice that I do before I open my eyes, before I get out of my bed, before I check my phone. I'm doing that so that I can start my day as centered as possible, so that I know that my first thoughts are my thoughts, not whatever the latest news media wants me to be thinking about, not whatever all of my work obligations are, or, requests from friends, which I love them, but I like to start my day centered in myself first, so that I know I can show up as my best self for all of those other things that then need to come next. Then after that, I usually get up, I get some water with lemon because it's super important for me to hydrate, do a little bit of a movement practice, and then I start my work. And that's my morning ritual, and it's really satisfying for me. It's really worked for me. And it took some time to figure out exactly what was best, but that's what I've landed on, and that's what continues to work. So why do we need ritual? We talked about some of the reasons why we do rituals, and they were all the nice reasons, right? Like, connecting to your ancestors, or visioning a future self, or being in the present moment. But there's also this very strong negativity bias in the brain. And in my head, the way I picture this is in the old movie Aliens, when they set up the trackers, which would detect the movement of the aliens, and they just kind of did these like sweeping laser beams, and then it would start beeping when the aliens would come closer. That's what my mind feels like when I'm stressed. Like it's constantly scanning, and then all of a sudden it lands on something and it says beep, 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 beep. And then it's off and running, right? And that's biological. There's a really good reason for that. So staying with Rick Hanson's theory here, he says that positive experiences are like Teflon. Positive experiences are like Teflon for the brain, and negative experiences are like Velcro. And that's because if we're thinking about positive experiences being carrots, being the rewards, and we think about negative experiences being punishments or sticks, as Rick says, if you don't get the carrot today, if you don't get the reward, if the good thing doesn't happen, that's fine. You can try again tomorrow. You can try again for endless days to get those carrots. But if you get the stick, if you get the punishment, and punishment with a capital P, which is death, that means no more carrots forever. And so those ancestors of ours that heard the rustle in the grass and was like, it's probably nothing, it's just the wind, were the ones that got eaten. And the ones that were paranoid, hypervigilant, scanning for danger, anxious and worried, got to pass on all their lovely genetics to us so that we could be alive and here, which is lovely, but also makes us a little anxiety prone. So ritual can help us work with this negativity bias in the brain by practicing positive neuroplasticity. We know that neurons that fire together wire together, and that commonly repeated phrase now, mental states become neural traits. And so when we practice something day after day, we're actually building new neural pathways in the brain that can help us utilize this other really lovely biological function, which is neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is not the same thing as rose-colored glasses. So we're not ignoring the terrible things that are happening to us. We're not sweeping them under the rug. We're not doing spiritual bypassing with all of this. We're just also acknowledging that in addition to all of our lovely survival mechanisms that keep us alive and functioning, we also want to practice not just survival, not just surviving, but thriving. Okay, so ritual helps us do that because it's playing on something that Daniel Kahneman popularized with this idea of system 1 and system 2 thinking. System 1 is automatic. It's fast. It requires very little effort, and there's not a whole lot of voluntary control with it. System 2 is effortful. It's when we're learning a new skill. It's when we're doing something complex, and our bodies love system 1. They want everything to be as energy efficient as possible. So it's trying to dump everything that it can into system 1, which means that if something awful happens to you, it's going to go to system 1 so that the next time you have an efficient automated response that will help you move through that situation quickly and safely. If it worked once, it's going to work again, is what the brain and the body think. Versus system 2, where it takes time and it takes energy, and there's a lot of unknown in system 2. And so the body doesn't super like that and will often try to snap us back to a habituated state as a way to save energy. So ritual is a way to move something that you want to embody, something that you want to practice on the regular, move it from system 2 to system 1 because you're going to be practicing it on the regular. And we're really good at practicing things like worry. Worry is its own kind of meditation, right? Like you're fixating on a particular thought over and over and over again. Ritual is a way to intentionally focus your attention on something that you want to have more energy in your life around. So I mentioned Fred Luskin earlier and how he had us focus on somebody that we felt connected to. He also really had this lovely practice of how to train some of this neuroplasticity in the brain. So again, we're at Esalen. It's gorgeous. It's easy to find positive things and things to be happy about. But he had us wander outside. We were supposed to go and find a view of something that delighted us in some way. And then we were supposed to look at it for 5 minutes. We looked at it. We explored it. We let ourselves have a sensory experience of it. And then when we came back to the workshop room, we were supposed to find a complete stranger, and then we were supposed to talk about that positive experience for 5 minutes. Now, if you've ever tried to do this, it's this thing where like if something bad happens to us, we can talk about it for years in detail. We will feel all the things. Our friends will feel the things that we're feeling as we're telling it to them. We can get really hyped, really invested when we're telling a negative story. But when we're talking about positive things that happen to us, we tend to blow past the details. We tend to go through it really quickly. Again, part of this is because of the negativity bias in the brain. Part of this is because we have a culture that doesn't like us doing this like quote unquote humble brag, where like if we're too happy, we're going to make people around us feel bad or like we're showing off in some way, like F that. But like that is a cultural thing that happens, right? And so this ability to actually focus on what felt good rather than dismissing it immediately because it's not a threat. So again, it can be really small things. This doesn't have to be like the big gratitude journal, right? Like we don't need to have an Oprah moment here where you're like, I'm so glad that I have a family that loves me and I have a house, and like, oh, that's wonderful. Like, please, I'm not trying to discount that, but can it also be really simple? Like, wow, that like sip of tea felt really nice in my mouth, or wow, the way the sunlight is slanting through the house right now and casting shadows is really pretty. Like it can be small things that delight you that you can practice. And this is one of the ways, this is a Taoist metaphor that I know, where let's say your body is a garden. Let's say your mind is a garden. And your attention is the hose that's putting water in that garden. Are you going to put that water on the weeds and help the weeds grow? Or are you going to put that attention on the flowers and help the flowers grow? So we want to be able to know how to pull the weeds and water the flowers. And ritual is one of the ways that we can do that. Ritual is a way to practice a new behavior that we want to be able to embody. Okay, I'd like to end with a poem by one of my all-time favorites. This is Mary Oliver. And this poem is about what it's like to focus your attention on something that maybe the culture doesn't deem super significant, but for her, it's everything. And so again, ritual is what matters to you. It's potentially it's what you're doing in order to achieve your fitness goals or be a better employee. But really, like, how is it enriching your life? Like, what is the life that you want to lead? And how can ritual help you build that? Here's an example of how to do that by Mary Oliver. This is her poem, Foolishness. No, it's not. Sometimes I spend all day trying to count leaves on a single tree. To do this, I have to climb branch by branch and write down the numbers in a little book. So I suppose, from their point of view, it's reasonable that my friends say, "What foolishness, she's got her head in the clouds again." But it's not. Of course I have to give up, but by then I am half crazy with the wonder of it, the abundance of the leaves, the quietness of the branches, the hopelessness of my effort. And I am in that delicious and important place, roaring with laughter, full of earth praise. I hope you find time today to practice something that helps you roar with laughter, makes you full of earth praise, that may be foolishness to somebody else but has all of the meaning to you. Take care.